Wiggle here. We're at the brunch table on the homestead. So this is a homeschooling homestead. So we're going to do a homeschool lesson today as we eat our breakfast. So we're going to start off with the question my son asked. Go ahead. Speak up.
Why do you have a 24 volt to 12 volt converter upstairs?
All right, we've been working on our getting our off-grid refrigerator working because it's shutting down at night. So we've been adding another panel to it, and while we're up there doing the work, my son sees this converter up there and he asks about it. So I was going to answer the question by asking some questions, so everybody might learn a little bit about solar. So, what do you have to have for a solar system? A powered, solar-powered system for your house.
The solar panels, the solar power.
Okay, solar panels.
The load.
The load, which is whatever your powering is.
Possibly a battery bank.
Battery bank, optional. So that's the main thing. So, in order to get all that to work, you got to match everything up because there's different voltages. And not everything works with all panels, don't work with all appliances and so forth. So what we're dealing with up there is we have 320 watt panels. Each panel is 320 watts. And it's at 24 volts. And it's at 9.5 amps. That's how much actual power it's producing at peak, the most it can make. So the fridge we have that we're trying to power is 12 volt, and it doesn't take anything else. It is strictly 12 volt. You can't hook up 24 volt to it. It has to be 12 volt, and it's more than 12 volt. It's like 14 or 16 volts. It can take more than 12, but it can't take 24, 26, 28 volts. Because 24 volts is more like 30 volts, and 12 volts is more like 14 or 15 volts. So it's a little bit higher. That way the batteries can get topped off and so forth. But what was happening is I was trying to run the solar panel, 24 volt panel, directly to the 12 volt battery bank. And I was using a cheap charge controller. So the charge controller is the thing that takes the power from the solar panels and puts it where you want it. Some solar charge controllers only do the battery, and some solar charge controllers can do a battery and a load. And you can program which way it goes and stuff like that. Well, there's different kind of charge controllers. There's cheap ones and there's expensive ones. So there's power wave modulation, PWM I think it is. That's the cheap ones. You can get those for 15 or 20 bucks. The thing about those is they have to be the same voltage. So you got to do 12 volts to 12 volts, 24 volts to 24 volts. I couldn't do that up there. So I was using the cheap 12 volt charge controller, PWM, and I was stepping down the current from the solar panel. That little box that you're asking about, it converted 24 volt to 12 volt. So before the power ever hit the battery bank, which was the battery bank, you can change the way it's put together and it can handle different voltages. That was a 12 volt battery bank, 24 volt panel, so I had to change it, and I was using the cheap controller to charge the battery so they don't overcharge. But it wasn't very efficient, and those cheap solar chargers are really not very good. So what I did is I bought the other more expensive kind. It's called Maximum Power Point Tracking, MPPT. What that does is it'll take any voltage and change it to any other voltage. Is within the range it's designed to do. So that one I bought, it'll do 24 volt or 12 volt, and it'll go to 12 volt or 24 volt. It's completely adaptable. It will figure it out on its own, and it will charge whatever you need. So you can hook a 24 volt device up to it, but it has to be going, it has to go lower. You can't let go 12 volt and try to expect that thing to make it go to 24 volt. It can't do that. But it can take 24 volt and change it down to 12 volt, if that makes sense. So When I got the new controller, I didn't need to step it down anymore. So what the MPPT controller is doing, it's taking the 24 volt panel, it's hooked up to a 12 volt battery bank. So it's like, it's going to figure out where it can go. So it brings the 24 volts down to like 18 volts, and it brings the 12 volt up to like 16 volts. It gets it as close as it can and charges them with the maximum. It uses the maximum amount of power to do the job, if it makes any sense. It's like a computer controlled. It's smart. So that's what we have up there now is MPPT, and that's like an $80 or $100 unit, as opposed to the other one is like $12 or $15 or $20. So that is the answer to your question. So the concern I had today was that when we hooked the second panel up, the controller said it can only take 520 watts. And we did two 320 watt panels, which is 640 watts. I was worried that we would fry it, but apparently it will block the extra. It won't take too much and it won't fry it. So apparently we are now charging our batteries at double the rate we were, and hopefully we'll be able to keep the refrigerator on. So if that was not too much said, what are any other questions we had? Was that understandable or was that confusing?
Understandable.
Did I confuse you, Lauren? I mean, Elle? I mean, it went over your head. Do you have any questions? Any other questions? Are you sure?
Aren't you able to multiply like volts times amps equals wattage or whatever?
Well, we can talk about that one later. That is a great question. But amp is how fast the current's running through the pipe. As I explained earlier, there's a 12 volt pipe is, this thick, and then you have a 24 volt pipe that's like that, and then you have a 36 and a 48. The wider the pipe, that's the amount of voltage it is, 12 volt, 24, 36 volt. How fast the current, or just imagine water flowing through a pipe, amperage is how fast it's flowing through that pipe. So we had 9.5 amps maximum yesterday. Today we have 19 amps maximum coming to power the batteries. So it runs, the way this thing is set up, it runs the refrigerator first. The refrigerator cycles on, the compressor needs power. The battery bank is, or the solar power is sent to the load first. And then all the extra energy is going to the batteries. So since we're in the middle of summer, what's happening is it's working on cooling all day and it's not getting a chance to charge up the battery. So now we have twice as much current flowing. Hopefully we'll have an abundance of current to charge those batteries up completely, top them off. That way they run more than an hour at night and shut off. If they're charged all the way up, they'll run for like 2 or 3 days. But they're just not getting charged back up. So we'll see if we didn't catch the box on fire. It's not a sunny day, so I would be more worried about like noon on a sunny day. You got to go up and check and make sure that thing's not going to get real hot and going to fry on you, because it's in a hot attic already. It should be fine according to what I've read on the internet for that particular one, but we'll still keep an eye on it. So Michael was asking about what volts and amps and watts and all that was. So any questions?
No,
Nope.
I don't think so. No.
All right, well that was just some basic homeschool 101 solar.